My sister slid the papers across the table like she was dealing cards at a casino. Her smirk told me this wasn't a suggestion. It was a sentence. I didn't touch the papers right away. Instead, I kept my hands folded on the table, calm, steady. 65 years of living had taught me that silence could cut deeper than shouting. And tonight, silence was my weapon. This isn't just a story. It's a journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and revenge. Stay with me till the very end because every second brings you closer to a twist you won't see coming. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken and buttered rolls, the kind of meal meant to look like family tradition. The grandfather clock ticked behind me, each sound heavier than the last. I noticed my sister's lipstick mark on her wine glass, bold and careless like she owned the room. My father's fork scraped across porcelain. My mother didn't look up. I already knew what was written on those pages. I had seen them before. Not this exact copy but drafts passed around quietly like secrets never meant for my eyes. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't prepare. That was their mistake. Sign here, my sister said casually, tapping the paper with her perfectly polished nail. It's simple. You'll still have your name on the clinic but I'll handle operations. Cleaner, more efficient. And of course, she glanced at my father then back at me, I'll receive 25% of the profits. 25%. From the clinic I built, the one I kept alive while they called me foolish for trying. The one I poured my retirement into when others told me to walk away. My chest tightened but I smiled. Calm. Always calm. I let my eyes drift over the table. The flicker of the candle, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the next room, the heavy velvet curtains pulled shut against the night. I could feel their confidence pressing in on me, suffocating. But I had something they didn't. Something tucked neatly inside the leather briefcase at my side. I reached for my water glass, steady hand, steady breath. It's a bold move, I said softly. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Polite, even amused. But inside I was cataloging every detail. The way my father wouldn't meet my eyes, the way my mother's spoon clinked nervously against her teacup, the way my sister leaned forward like a cat waiting to pounce. You've been carrying too much stress, my father added, his tone rehearsed. It's better this way. For everyone. The clock ticked. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound carved into my patience. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why my sister, who had never lifted a finger to help at the clinic, deserved 25% of the profits. I didn't remind them of the nights I stayed late, the weekends I gave up, the years I spent patching leaks and balancing budgets while they looked away. No. They knew all of that. And they didn't care. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that their plan wasn't new to me. They were walking me into a trap they thought they had set. But I had been patient, far more patient than they realized. I glanced at my sister. You've thought of everything, haven't you? She grinned, satisfied. Of course. It's for your own good. Her words hung in the air, sharp as glass. For your own good. That was the line she had used since we were children. When she took my clothes without asking. When she spread lies at school to make herself look better. When she let me take the blame for things she had done. Always for my own good. The candlelight caught the gold bracelet on her wrist. My bracelet once. A gift from an aunt who had passed it down to me. She had claimed it years ago, smiling sweetly while telling everyone it suited her more. I had let it go then. But this time I wasn't letting go. I set my glass down carefully, the sound echoing too loud in the quiet room. Interesting, I murmured. My sister tilted her head. So you'll sign? I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of their expectations hang between us. My fingers brushed against the leather briefcase at my side. Just one snap of the latch and everything would change. Not yet. Not tonight. They weren't ready to see what I had prepared. The unease in the room thickened. My father cleared his throat. My mother finally looked up, her eyes darting between us like she wanted to stop this but didn't dare. You always overthink things, my sister said, her tone half mocking. This is simple. Don't make it harder than it has to be. I smiled again, small, controlled. Inside my heart pounded, but not from fear. From anticipation. Because they thought tonight was about me losing control. They had no idea it was about them walking right into mine. I leaned forward just enough that the candlelight caught my face. You're right, I said quietly. It is simple. For the first time my sister's smile faltered. Only slightly. But I saw it. I always saw the cracks before anyone else. The clock struck 8, the sound vibrating through the dining room. I placed my hand firmly on the briefcase but didn't open it. Not yet. Let them sweat a little longer. My father finally spoke, his voice low. So, do we have an agreement? I met his eyes at last. 65 years of his indifference stared back at me. For decades he had dismissed me as the quiet one, the soft one, the one who could be bent without breaking. He was about to learn how wrong he had been. I'll think about it, I said, my voice calm, steady, unshaken. The look on their faces, my sister's frustration, my father's disbelief, my mother's quiet dread, was almost enough to satisfy me. Almost. But not yet. Because tonight was not the night I revealed what was inside the briefcase. Tonight was the night I let them believe they had cornered me, while I watched them build their own downfall. The papers still sat between us, waiting. My sister tapped her nail against them, impatient. I didn't move. The candle flickered. The clock ticked. My smile lingered. And across the table my sister's smirk slipped, just for a moment, as if she sensed that I was holding something back. Something sharp, something she would never see coming. I kept my eyes on hers, unblinking. The night wasn't over. The game had just begun. Her smirk slipped, just for a moment, as if she sensed I was holding something back. I kept my eyes locked on hers, the silence stretching so long that even the clock seemed to hesitate. And in that pause, memories began pressing against me, as heavy and sharp as broken glass. I saw myself at 10 years old, standing barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, while she, my sister, showed off the new dress my mother had bought her. I had asked for the same one, begged for it, but my mother only said, "One is enough. She looks better in it anyway." I had smiled politely even then. Smiled while I swallowed the bitterness. Now, decades later, the taste was still there. Familiar. My sister broke the silence with a sigh, exaggerated and dramatic. "You're dragging this out as always. Dad, tell her she doesn't have a choice." Her words stung not because of their content but because of their tone. That same dismissive, sharp edge she had wielded since we were girls. My father cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "She knows what's best for everyone. She just needs time." Time. That was always his excuse. When I wanted him to come to a school recital, when I asked for help fixing the old car, when I begged him to believe me after one of my sister's lies, he just needed time. And he never gave it. I felt my shoulders stiffen. My hands folded neatly in my lap, curled into fists. "I'm not dragging anything out," I said evenly. My voice sounded calm, but inside, a storm rattled against my ribs. "I'm listening." The lie slid off my tongue smoothly. I wasn't listening, not to them. I was listening to the rhythm of my own breathing, steady and deliberate. I was listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the sound grounding me in the present. I was listening to the echo of old wounds whispering in my ears. "They've always treated you this way. They always will. Unless you stop them." My sister leaned back, satisfied with my father's support. She sipped her wine and left a crimson mark on the rim. "I'm not your enemy," she said lightly. "I'm trying to help you. You can't run that clinic alone forever." The way she said it, like she was generous, like she was saving me, nearly made me laugh. I took a slow breath. "You've never stepped foot in that clinic except to ask for free prescriptions." Her face tightened, the first crack in her carefully painted smile. She set her glass down harder than necessary. "That's not fair." "Fair." I tilted my head, finally letting my eyes flick to the papers on the table. Funny word to use here. The room thickened with silence again. My mother's teacup rattled against its saucer as she set it down, her hands shaking. She looked at me, then at my sister, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the courage. That had always been her role, the silent witness, the quiet accomplice. I turned my gaze back to my sister. And just like that, another memory surfaced. I was 16, standing outside the school gym waiting for a ride home. He had told my parents I'd gone to a party, sneaking out drinking. None of it true. But when my father's car pulled up, his anger boiling over, he didn't ask for my side. He only said, "You're embarrassing us." That night I cried myself to sleep. Not because of the punishment but because I realized the truth. In this family her word weighed more than mine. And here we were again, decades later, her word written neatly on legal paper, waiting for my signature. I didn't move. I let the silence do the work. Silence had always been my curse. Now it was my weapon. "You know," I said softly, This isn't the first time you've taken something from me. Her eyes narrowed. Oh, don't start with old history. We're adults now. Yes, I agreed, my voice calm. We are. The clock ticked past 8:10. My pulse matched the rhythm. My father shifted in his seat. This isn't about the past. It's about making sure the future is secure. I looked at him, then really looked at him. The man who had never once stood up for me. The man who always found reasons to excuse her. His thinning hair, his wrinkled hands, his tired eyes. None of it softened me. If anything, it hardened me further. Secure. That was his word. For years I had secured his comfort. I had secured the family's reputation by running a clinic he never believed in. I had secured the safety net my sister now wanted to steal. And all the while they had chipped away at me. My fingers brushed against the edge of the briefcase, but I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I let my mind drift to another old wound. The bracelet. My bracelet. Taken just like everything else. I had let it go, telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. And she wore it still, right now, glinting under the candlelight as if it belonged to her. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about the clinic. It was about every wound layered on top of the last, pressed into me until I had almost forgotten what it felt like to be respected. Almost. I straightened my shoulders, the chair creaking beneath me. You've always assumed I would stay quiet, I said, my eyes fixed on my sister. That I would accept whatever you took. She blinked, caught off guard. Because you always have. Her confidence was slipping. Just a little. But enough for me to see it. Enough to remind me that the years of silence had not been wasted. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice so they had to strain to hear. Maybe I was waiting. For what? She scoffed, trying to regain control. I smiled, small and deliberate. For the right moment. The grandfather clock chimed again, its sound echoing through the heavy air. My mother flinched. My father grunted. My sister frowned, impatient. But I stayed calm. I always stayed calm. And for the first time in my life, I saw unease in their eyes instead of mine. The weight of old wounds pressed against me, but it didn't crush me. Steadied me. It reminded me why I couldn't afford to falter now. I didn't open the briefcase. I didn't need to. Not yet. I simply folded my hands again, lifted my chin and stared across the table. A woman they had underestimated for 65 years. And as the candle flickered between us, I let them wonder, let them squirm, let them feel the smallest taste of the uncertainty they had forced on me my whole life. The night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I lifted my chin, staring across the table. A woman they had underestimated for 65 years. The candle flickered, casting shadows across my sister's face. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms like she had already won. My father shifted uncomfortably, drumming his fingers against the wood. My mother stayed still, her hands folded tight in her lap. They were waiting for me to break the silence again. They were waiting for me to fold. Instead, I reached down and placed my hand on the briefcase. The leather was cool beneath my palm, the handle worn from years of use. It had carried patient files, financial ledgers, receipts from long nights of keeping the clinic afloat. But tonight it carried something else. Something they weren't prepared to see. I clicked open one latch. The sound was small, but in that quiet room, it echoed like a hammer on steel. My sister's eyes darted to the case, sharp and suspicious. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was sharp, too quick, betraying a flicker of nerves. I didn't answer right away. I lifted the second latch. The metal snapped open with a crisp bite. My pulse stayed steady, though my body hummed with tension. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had prepared for quietly, patiently. I opened the lid, reached inside and drew out a single envelope. Thick. Heavy. Their eyes followed it as I laid it gently on the table, sliding it across the polished surface. My sister gave a short laugh, but it sounded forced. "What's this?" More stalling. I looked at her directly. "Read it." She hesitated, glancing at my father, then back at me. He gestured for her to open it, his jaw tight. She tore at the flap with her manicured nails and unfolded the paper inside. The silence grew heavier with every line she scanned. Her smirk vanished. Her shoulders stiffened. And then her eyes darted back to me, sharp, confused, unsettled. What is this supposed to be?" she stammered. My father leaned over, snatched the paper from her and began reading himself. I watched his face carefully. First confusion, then disbelief, then the pale shade of realization. It was working. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to argue. I simply folded my hands in front of me and let the paper speak for me. They had never believed I paid attention to details. They thought I skimmed contracts, trusted blindly, or avoided the fine print. But they had forgotten how many late nights I'd spent combing through every line of every agreement, how many times I'd been forced to protect the clinic from opportunists who saw me as vulnerable. They had forgotten that my quiet was not weakness. It was study. It was preparation. Clause 4.3, my father muttered under his breath, his eyes darting across the page. He read it twice. 3 times. His lips parted, but no words came. My mother finally broke her silence. What does it mean? He didn't answer. He couldn't. I leaned forward, resting my elbows lightly on the table. It means, I said softly, that things are not as simple as you thought. My sister scoffed, though her voice wavered. You're bluffing. It's nonsense. Legal jargon you don't even understand. But her words lacked conviction. She knew better. She knew I wouldn't bring something to this table unless it mattered. I let her squirm. I let them all squirm. The air in the room shifted. The confidence that had pressed in on me earlier was fading, slipping away, replaced by unease. The candle flame bent in a small draft, and for a moment I thought it might go out completely. I reached for my water glass again, lifting it with steady hands. I sipped slowly, deliberately, while they sat frozen. The cool water washed away the dryness in my throat, but it also bought me time. Time for them to feel the weight of what they had just read. Memories stirred in me again. All those years they had laughed at my caution, dismissed my questions, rolled their eyes when I double-checked everything. You worry too much, they'd say. But that worry had kept me alive, kept the clinic running, kept me from being swallowed whole by their greed. Now that same worry had teeth. My father finally looked up, his face pale. You can't mean this seriously. I didn't flinch. It's written there in black and white. My sister slammed her hand against the table, making the dishes rattle. You've twisted this. You've set a trap. I met her anger with calm. Did I? Or did you walk straight into it? Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no answer. My mother fidgeted, her thin fingers wringing the edge of her napkin. Maybe we should discuss this later. Privately. But it was too late for privacy. Too late for soft voices and backroom deals. I had brought the truth into the open and I wasn't letting it go. So I wasn't finished. This was only the beginning. I let the silence stretch again, watching them squirm. The tension tasted almost sweet, like the first bite of something forbidden. For the first time that evening I felt no weight pressing down on me. I felt lighter. Stronger. But I didn't reveal everything. Not yet. I let them see just enough to know they were in trouble. Just enough to plant fear. Because fear, once it takes root, grows fast. My sister shoved the paper back toward me. This doesn't mean anything. You won't actually use it. I slid it back across the table with 2 fingers, slow and deliberate. Then why are you afraid? Her face flushed red, but she didn't answer. My father exhaled, long and shaky. You'll regret this, he said finally. Family doesn't treat each other this way. The words almost made me laugh. Family. The word they had used for years as a leash, pulling tight whenever I dared resist. I held his gaze. Family doesn't steal from each other either. The clock struck 8:30. The sound was sharp, final. No one moved. No one spoke. I leaned back in my chair, resting my hand once more on the briefcase. Not opening it, not yet. They had seen one page, one small piece of what I carried. They thought that was the whole of it. They thought the threat was written only in those lines. They had no idea how much deeper it went. The candle guttered again, the flame bowing low before rising tall once more. Shadows danced across the walls, across their faces, pale, tense, unsettled. And I sat there quietly, watching them realize for the first time in their lives that they did not control me. Not anymore. The night was only half over. And the real storm had not yet begun. My father leaned back in his chair, his face pale, his jaw stiff. My sister crossed her arms, the paper still lying between us like a snake on the table. My mother fidgeted with her napkin, eyes darting between us, as though she could sew this family back together with a look. But the thread had snapped years ago. Tonight they were finally realizing it. Let's be reasonable, my father said at last, his voice low, measured, trying to regain control. You don't want to drag this out. These clauses, this paperwork, it doesn't change what's fair. Fair. That word again. It slid off his tongue so easily, as though it had ever been applied to me. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the table. It changes everything. My sister let out a short laugh, sharp and brittle. You think this piece of paper makes you untouchable? You really think you can outsmart all of us? All of you? I repeated softly, as if tasting the words. You mean the family that's tried to bleed me dry for decades? Yes. I do. Her cheeks flushed and she pressed her lips into a thin line. The truth was, I had counted on this moment. Counted on their arrogance, their assumption that I would always play the role they had written for me. The quiet one, the compliant one, the one who gave up what was hers for peace. But they didn't know how many nights I had spent preparing. They didn't know the hours I'd poured into studying documents, laws, and contracts while they slept comfortably, convinced I was blind to everything they schemed. Their greed had blinded them, and now it would undo them. I tapped my fingers gently against the table. You've built your confidence on one assumption. That I wouldn't fight back. My father's eyes narrowed. And you think you're fighting now? I know I am, I said. The candle flickered, sending his shadow sprawling across the wall behind him, larger than life. But the man himself looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen him. My sister pushed the paper back toward me, her nails scraping against the wood. You won't win. Even if this clause means something, even if you've got some clever trick, you'll regret it. You're alone. Alone. That word landed heavier than I expected. For years I had carried the weight of solitude even in crowded rooms. I had felt it when my father turned away, when my mother stayed silent, when my sister smirked and took what she wanted. But tonight, for the first time, alone didn't feel like a weakness. It felt like freedom. I reached into the briefcase again, drawing out a second envelope. My sister's eyes widened, her confidence wavering further. What's that? She snapped. I laid it on the table, sliding it closer to her. Records. Her fingers hesitated before touching it, as if she feared being burned. She opened it slowly, scanning the first page. Her face went pale. What is this? She whispered. Proof, I said calmly. Every time you've dipped your hand into what wasn't yours. Every prescription you claimed without paying. Every false expense you submitted under my clinic's name. My father's head whipped toward her. Is this true? She stammered, her voice cracking. She's lying. She's making this up. But the papers trembled in her hands, betraying her. My mother finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp with fear. Where did you get this? I met her eyes. From keeping records. From paying attention. From refusing to be blind, even when you all hoped I would be. The silence that followed was different now. It wasn't heavy with their confidence, but with their panic. I let it settle. I let them taste it. You've always underestimated me, I said quietly. You mistook my patience for weakness. You mistook my silence for ignorance. But I've been watching. For years. My father clenched his fists. Why now? Why bring this up tonight? I tilted my head, studying him. Because tonight you tried to take the one thing that matters most to me. And I wanted you to see that greed comes with a cost. My sister slammed the folder shut and shoved it back toward me. You think this scares me? You won't dare use it. I held her gaze. You already look scared. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The clock struck 9. The sound rang through the room, sharp and final. I leaned back, my hand resting once more on the briefcase. I don't need to raise my voice. I don't need to make threats. Your own actions are enough to undo you. My father's face was red now, his jaw set hard. You think you can humiliate us with this game of yours? It's not a game, I said simply. It's the truth. He slammed his palm against the table. The dishes rattled. My mother flinched. My sister's wine glass toppled, spilling red liquid across the white tablecloth. The stain spread quickly like blood soaking through fabric. No one moved to clean it. I watched it seep, watched it stain, and thought, this is what their greed looks like. A mess they can't contain. For years I had been the one to clean up. To fix what they broke. To cover what they spoiled. But not anymore. I folded my hands again, steady, calm. You wanted my clinic. You wanted my profit. You wanted to take what I built. Instead, you've exposed yourselves. You've shown me exactly how little you think of me. And now, I paused, letting the words hang. Now you'll live with the weight of that. The candle guttered again, throwing their faces into sharp relief. My father looked furious. My sister looked shaken. My mother looked afraid. I stayed calm. Always calm. Inside though, something had shifted. For decades I had carried their weight. Their greed. Their dismissal. Their cruelty. Now I was laying it back at their feet. And they had no idea how much heavier it would get before the night was through. The spilled wine spread farther across the white cloth, soaking into the fibers, bleeding toward the edge of the table. My sister stared at it as if the stain itself accused her. My father's chest rose and fell in angry bursts, his fists clenched tight. My mother dabbed at the cloth with a napkin, though the effort was useless. The damage was permanent. Just like what was about to happen here tonight. I slid the briefcase closer to me, the leather scraping softly against the table. Their eyes followed every movement. You've shown me who you are, I said quietly. But it's time you see who I am. My sister scoffed, though her voice cracked. You think one clause and some records make you powerful? I opened the briefcase fully now. Inside, neatly stacked, were the documents I had been preparing for months. My protection. My revenge. My freedom. I pulled out the first folder and laid it flat on the table. This, I said, is proof of financial fraud. Every false claim you made under the clinic's name. Every dollar taken without authorization. My father's face drained of color. He reached for the folder, but I slid it back toward me before his fingers touched it. No, I said firmly. You don't get to hold it. You only get to watch. My sister laughed again, but it was a hollow sound. You wouldn't dare turn this over to anyone. I met her eyes. It's already been done. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Her smile vanished. My father froze. My mother dropped her napkin. I leaned forward. Emails were sent an hour before dinner. Copies of everything. To the board. To the auditors. To the state. My father's lips parted, but no words came. My sister shook her head violently, as if denial could rewrite reality. You're lying, she whispered. I reached into the briefcase again and pulled out my phone. Calmly I slid it across the table. On the screen, the sent folder sat open, each email stamped with a time. I didn't need to say anything more. The proof was right there. My sister shoved the phone back, her hand trembling. You've ruined us. No, I said, my voice steady. You ruined yourselves. I just stopped cleaning up after you. The clock struck 9:30, the sound slicing through the thick silence. For years I had lived under their shadow. For years I had swallowed their cruelty, patched their mistakes, and carried their weight. Tonight the weight shifted. Tonight they would carry their own sins. My father slammed his fist on the table again, but his power was gone. He looked smaller than ever, a man stripped of authority. You'll regret this, he said hoarsely. I shook my head. I regret waiting this long. My sister's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't from sorrow. They were from rage. You've destroyed the family. The family destroyed itself, I replied. My mother finally spoke, her voice weak, almost pleading. You don't have to do this. We can fix it quietly. No one else has to know. I turned to her, my heart heavy but resolute. Quiet is what kept me trapped for 65 years. Silence is what you asked of me every time she lied, every time he dismissed me, every time I was pushed aside. No more silence. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't argue. She knew it was true. I stood then, pushing my chair back slowly. The wooden legs scraped against the floor, the sound sharp, final. I placed my hand on the briefcase, closed it with deliberate care, and lifted it from the table. You wanted my clinic. You wanted my profit. You wanted my life. But tonight I take it all back. My sister stood too, her face twisted with fury. You'll walk away from this house and never come back. I looked at her calmly. This house. The deeds are in my name now. Clause 4.3 made sure of it. Her mouth fell open. She turned to my father, desperate. Tell her she's lying. Tell me this isn't real. But he said nothing. He couldn't. Because he had read it himself. He had seen the words. He knew the trap they had set for me had closed around them instead. I stepped away from the table, the briefcase secure in my hand. My heart was pounding, but not with fear, with freedom. For the first time in decades I felt light. At the doorway I turned back to face them one last time. My father rigid, my sister trembling, my mother pale. "You raised me to be quiet," I said softly. "You mistook my patience for weakness. Tonight you learned that silence doesn't mean surrender. It means waiting for the right moment to strike." No one spoke. The only sound was the steady tick of the clock, counting down the last seconds of their illusion of control. I reached for the doorknob but paused. One final thought pressed against me, sharp and clear. I turned back, my eyes settling on my sister. "You always said everything you took was for my own good. Well, tonight I take everything back, for mine." Her lips trembled. My father looked away. My mother lowered her eyes. And with that I opened the door. The cool night air hit my face, fresh and liberating. Behind me the candle flickered, the wine stains spread, and the weight of old wounds finally slipped from my shoulders. I stepped outside, closing the door softly but firmly as if sealing the past behind me. For the first time in my life I wasn't their daughter, their scapegoat, their fool. I was free. If this story gripped you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe now for more powerful revenge and betrayal stories, each one darker, deeper, and more unforgettable than the last.